Welcome to Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show. Our guest for today is Jonathan Haywood. He's the Senior Vice President, Global Product Strategy for API and Integration at Software AG. Software AG is a German multinational software corporation that develops enterprise software for business process management, integration, and big data analytics. Now, it was founded in 1969 and is headquartered in Germany and is listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. It has over 10,000 enterprise customers in over 70 countries. Now, with that, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
Now, Jonathan, for a start, shed some light on the key trends and emerging technologies that are shaping the tech landscape in 2023.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, obviously, generative AI is really hitting the mainstream now. I mean, ChatGPT has been all over the news. Obviously, it's a little bit of a hype phase, but we're also starting to see people really explore the use of that and how they can incorporate in that. And in fact, Software AG, we released a ChatGPT connector for our webmethods.io integration platform, which allows people to now incorporate that into simple flows. And the areas we're seeing that being explored, I think, is in customer service, sales, and support, where you can actually create more sort of human sounding or variations in messaging to customers rather than sort of static type of messages. And I think, obviously it's got a long way to go, but I think there's a lot of potential there. I was going to say another one, which I think is also very relevant, is we're seeing companies reevaluating the role that ERP plays in their landscape. And ERP was originally designed to be a system of record with a lot of standardized and industry practice processes. But organizations are realizing that over the years, they've maybe customized a lot. They've added a lot of their own sauce, their own flavor to be able to differentiate. And that's now sort of causing a lot of friction between the need of the business to move fast and change things fast, but also the need to keep a system of record, which is mission critical for your company, stable and highly governed. And if you think, for example, the shift to SAP S/4HANA that is coming is driving customers to rethink that. And it's surprising that more than half of SAP customers, for example, are taking a greenfield approach, meaning that they are starting from scratch in a way as they move there. That means that their whole landscape, their data landscape, is going to change as part of that. And I think, we see exciting opportunities there for the role of API and integration in keeping those things connected as that sort of ERP landscape shifts.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, and that sounds absolutely frightening to me because, so I'm first got to say, your tagline says, simplify the connected enterprise. Now, when you talk about using APIs and integration, for me, it talks about how do we, one of the key things that it rings in my mind is how do we optimize our existing investments and then basically engage in newer, better, and more efficient ways. But then if you throw out your old legacy systems and start a greenfield approach, that's often more of a risk sometimes. Walk us through some of those challenges and how Software AG's API and integration product lines kind of help customers.
Well, that's the difficult challenge facing a lot of companies, and you're absolutely right. And I think that what people are realizing is that systems of record are difficult to change, but as long as you're able to maintain them, and I think that's the key thing here, then there isn't necessarily a need to replace them, right? So a lot of it is about exposing and getting more value from data that is locked away in those systems, and using technology like ours to expose that, to API enable these systems, whether it's mainframes or databases or older applications or cloud applications, being able to create a unified API layer that actually exposes data from all of those systems. Now you can start to leverage that in new revenue streams, for example, or you can now start to gain new insights that you can do to optimize processes or to just increase customer satisfaction because you're bringing data that was previously locked away. And that's the thing with legacy systems. A lot of the time, the data there is only accessible to a small number of people in the company that have been trained and have access to it. But that data, if it can be exposed, is so much more valuable.
So and so this is where your solutions come into play, isn't it? Because essentially then you leverage on old investments, build stuff on top or connect with new applications, and then you have more business value.
Exactly, and it's about, as we say, connecting, the connected enterprise, but it actually goes beyond that as well, because we're talking about existing systems, but also, of course, new systems. Because you see, for example, that one way that companies will differentiate is they will maybe adopt SaaS applications for HR or for a CRM or these type of areas. And of course, that needs to also be connected to your core enterprise systems that are already existing, right? So you're now spanning quite a complex data landscape. But another part that's coming in as well is data from the physical world. If you think about a manufacturer, for example, that has a bunch of machines, you're starting to see the emergence of IoT, putting sensors on those machines. And IoT is often seen in isolation, where you're going to get data from those machines and maybe then make a decision based on that. But wouldn't it be great if you can then, when you're looking at that data, see on that same pane of glass information about when that machine was last repaired, or by whom, or what parts are inside it? That's mixing enterprise data with physical data. Or when you determine that a machine needs to be repaired because it's getting too hot, rather than just notifying someone and have them create a work order, you can close that loop automatically and create a work order in your work order management system to send an engineer to fix it. So the world of data is not just enterprise data that we see in these applications, but is also the data from the physical world.
So, Jonathan, I'm going to betray my age when I say that this smacks of what Bill Gates wrote in his book all those years ago about the digital nervous system. And this
Absolutely.
is what it is, isn't it?
It is indeed. And in fact, you mentioned that, and it reminds me very much of one of our customers, Johnson & Johnson, large global company. I think everybody's familiar with them. They've been using web methods for a very long time. They call it their enterprise dial tone. So also showing our age, we used to pick up the phone and there was dial tone. You just know it's there, it's reliable, you don't worry about it. They call it their enterprise dial tone. In fact, they've connected all of their business units across all continents, and they move over 1 billion messages per day between these things. That has to just be rock solid and reliable. And I think that's very much the nervous system analogy there.
Now, Jonathan, you've got a global role, and Software AG really has large customers around the world. You're currently in Johannesburg in South Africa. Give us a sense of some customer success stories that Software AG has helped in terms of their API and integration solutions, perhaps in APJ as well, where we are based.
Absolutely. So I can, one in APJ, which comes to mind, is actually a large insurance company. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to name them, but a large Pan-Asian insurance company. And one of the challenges that they have is, because they sell insurance a lot through brokers, is they don't know too much about the end customer. They would like to know more about the end customer, but they also want to promote a healthy life for their customers, because it's mainly health insurance that they sell. So they've created a health app that they encourage their customers to download, and they can then link this with their smartwatch or their fitness app or whatever. The idea being that they get more engaged with their own healthy life, but that's also turned into a score, and they get rewards. So if they're leading a healthy life, then through the app they will be able to get discounts at stores or entertainment or these type of things. Now you can imagine that on the one hand the insurance company gets to know more about their customers, but also to provide that infrastructure, they've got to have all of the connectivity to be able to redeem these rewards and so on. So there's quite a lot of things going on behind the scenes there, and that's really where web methods plays in that space, in the enablement behind this app. And of course the benefit for the customer is a healthier lifestyle, a bit of gamification. They feel closely linked to the insurance company, and the company themselves will learn more about the customer and can potentially position much more targeted sort of upsell and cross-sell opportunities to them as they learn more about where they are in their life phase. I was going to give you one more example as well around new revenue streams in the UK. A company called National Express. They're a bus company that works city-to-city buses, and I think, like in many parts of the world, people that tend to choose the bus are people that have more time than money, because buses take longer than trains. So National Express wanted to try and lure people away from the trains and thought, well, you can do a big advertising campaign. That's going to cost a lot of money. So they thought, where do train passengers go to buy their tickets? And in the UK, the train network is deregulated. There are 10 or 20 companies. So people don't go to the train company website to buy their ticket. They go to a website called thetrainline.com. So National Express did a deal with thetrainline.com to offer bus tickets as part of the search results when people are buying train tickets. So if I'm a train passenger and I'm planning to go and buy a train ticket, I go there and I fill in my sort of where I'm going from and where I'm going to. It'll give me the options. And if I travel from London to Manchester today, it'll cost £100. It's very, very expensive. But at the top of the screen there, it says bus, £20. And of course, even if you capture just a small fraction of people that think, oh, £100 is really expensive, let me look at that £20 option, the bus option. Yeah, it takes twice as long. But even if they can capture just 0.5% of those people that were planning to buy a train ticket and actually want to be more cost conscious, that's a huge success for them. But for every passenger that still buys a train ticket, it's hit the APIs of National Express. So their APIs had to deal with a 100 times increase in load to be able to support this new revenue stream. That scaling was made possible with our integration and API platform, including scaling it to the cloud, because they couldn't do that in their existing on-premises version. But that brought them 7-figure additional revenues through that new revenue stream. So I think that's also a great example of enabling new revenue streams through APIs and integration.
And you know, people always talk about technology sometimes as a cost. You know, there are some business leaders or board members who look at technology as a cost. But this brings to mind another thing around in the Blue Ocean strategy book, which says convert non-customers into customers. So the train customers are not actually non-customers for the bus. And suddenly you've just opened up a whole new market.
Yeah, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. And that's the key thing. You're right. IT so often is seen as a cost center. But once you start to think of it in terms of what just that enablement of data can do in terms of generating business or improving business, then it's much more than just a cost driver, yes.
Now, having said this now, companies like Software AG are in the forefront of a lot of legacy businesses, for example, trying to do a broader digital transformation of their overall business. Now, through your lens, your global lens, how could you share some examples of how you all have helped all legacy companies to really leapfrog and reinvent themselves in the last couple of years?
Well, definitely. I mean, there's one good example is BTPN Bank in Malaysia. Indonesia. And they, the thing, of course, with Indonesia, I'm sure your viewers are familiar, of course, a highly sort of spread out country with a lot of rural villages and not a lot of technology. So people would have to travel days to go and do banking. And of course, many people didn't have access to banks or payments and things like that. So what BTPN did is, you know, they kept their legacy systems. Core banking systems are not something that you want to change, but they use our technology to API enable those. And first of all, they created a mobile app quite a few years ago, which actually enabled like a local agent, a local storekeeper in remote villages to be able to provide very basic banking services to customers there, allowing them to just pay a bill or send money to somewhere else, for example. And that was later then replaced or followed up with Genius, the mobile app for for the banking services. And that really brought them also completely new customer base, particularly millennials, people that were used to using mobile phones, and actually brought them additional 60,000 customers in the first 3 months that app was live. And they did that without replacing and their core banking system. They modernized it. They API enabled it to still be able to create a very modern customer experience.
Now, looking ahead, the technology industry is fraught with competition. Software AG has been around for a very, very long time. How are you positioning yourself to stay ahead of the curve in the years ahead?
Well, there's a few things. So first of all, what we see is, yes, the integration API space, there is a lot of competition. What makes us unique is, first of all, we protect the investment that our customers make in our technology, because you're not buying an application, you're buying a platform. Customers will actually spend a multiple of implementing the APIs and so on top of our platform than they spend on the software itself. So it's important that we protect that investment. And we've, throughout the 25 years that Web Methods has been here, we have maintained a path forward. Even customers that have been using our technology for 20 years can take the assets and the services that they have built, and with a click of the button, make them available in the cloud. With a tick of a box, make them available as REST APIs, even though they were never conceived that way. That is something is unique, along with the fact that we are neutral. We're not tied to a single application vendor. We don't lock people in. We're not tied to a particular cloud vendor, and that is just increasingly rare in these times, and is something that is valued by our customers and the feedback that we get. And I think that is something that companies are looking for a lot more. They want to keep their options open. They want to maintain agility and flexibility, and I think we're perfectly positioned to capitalize on that.
Now, 2023, we're now in the second quarter of 2023. There are dark clouds everywhere in terms of geopolitical tensions, banking crisis. Customers are tightening their belts. What advice would you give CIOs in terms of prioritizing their IT spend?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think, I mean, we saw quite a big boom, as you mentioned earlier, in the pandemic and the drive for digitalization in that period. I don't think that desire has gone away. But also, as you mentioned earlier, think about how technology can help the business, how it can be an enabler. Because sometimes there are cases where a company doesn't quite even anticipate the business benefits that can come from something like that. So from making a wise technology choice in a future-proof platform, you will then find that there are steps, beyond that can be done for helping the business and not just driving down costs. So that would be my advice: is the business benefits and not just the IT cost.
Jonathan, it's been a fascinating conversation, which I learned a lot and really enjoyed. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
Well, I think a theme that you've probably noticed throughout all of this is about turning data into value. Organizations have a huge amount of data, and a lot of it is locked away in applications. And just exposing that, unleashing and releasing that data, making it available, it's amazing what sort of type of things that can be created from that. It's a very simple step, very simple sounding step, but I mean, data, I think, is where it's all at, and that's what we're focused on, turning that into value for organizations.
Jonathan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be with you.
Now, I've been speaking to Jonathan Haywood. He's the Senior Vice President, Global Product Strategy, API and Integration at Software AG, on Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video and podcast will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It'll also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.